I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. Tonight we're starting with a daughter's decades-long quest to right what she considers a horrible wrong. She wants to overturn the conviction of her father for murdering her mother. It's our big story tonight. I have to admit, when I first heard about this, I likely thought the same thing that just went through your mind. It's an understandable emotion, but it's probably just wishful thinking. And then earlier this month, it seemed to become much more of a real possibility. A Clark County jury in a civil trial found a different man responsible for that murder. Our team here has been following the case for a number of years. Let's get some background from former KGW anchor and reporter Ashley Korsland, who many of you will remember. She spent hours and hours, month after month, researching and reporting on this case.
Pooneh Gray has never been able to let go of what happened on May 1st, 1989, the day her world changed.
I mean, there has not been one day that's gone by since my mom's murder that I haven't thought about her and this case.
As Pooneh's mother, Effie Entezari, left for work just before 6 that morning, someone approached her in the parking lot of her Vancouver apartment complex and shot her in the head at point-blank range. No witnesses came forward except a neighbor who reported seeing a yellow car slow down, then speed away, close to where Effie was found.
This was a premeditated, highly calculating homicide.
Police arrested Pooneh's father, Mike Entezari, a Portland Community College professor. Mike and Effie were in the middle of a contentious divorce. He had no alibi during the time of the murder, and police found a gun in Mike's car, the same type that killed Effie. A jury ultimately found Mike guilty of murder. He served 16 years of a 25-year sentence. Mike maintained his innocence until he died in 2019. Mike didn't drive a yellow car, like the one seen speeding away from the scene, and investigators never found evidence of Effie's blood on Mike's clothing or in the barrel of his gun. But the biggest piece of evidence Pooneh believes will prove someone else committed the murder is DNA discovered on Effie's clothing years after her murder, thanks to advancements in DNA technology.
There was a mixture. There were multiple individuals' DNA on the sweater and the DNA that was collected.
This is attorney Renee Rothage, who's worked on Pooneh's case for 18 years.
We've eliminated Mike Entezari significantly. His DNA does not appear anywhere on her sweater and is not in this mixture. And instead, the predominant DNA that we found is from the person who we believe is the shooter. We think we have strong evidence against the shooter, and we hope for an arrest, and then we hope that the shooter then describes what happened and explains why he did it.
Do you get worried about not being able to resolve this in your life?
No, I've never had a doubt that I'm gonna get the person that killed my mom. I knew it from the beginning, and I told my mom. I kept her at the funeral home. So I saw her every day, and I told her I'm gonna get the person that did that to her, and I am going to. So no, it's gonna end, and it's gonna end with me getting the person that killed my mom.
Now, in the time since that report, Pooneh, the daughter there, brought a civil lawsuit for wrongful death against a man named Viktor Pell. The Oregonian reports the DNA and ballistic evidence pointed to Pell and that he had bragged that he once worked for the Shah of Iran's secret police. The jury found him guilty on a 10-2 verdict, which is allowed for civil cases. They awarded Pooneh more than $4 million. I recently had a chance to talk with her about that.
It was great. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was in shock. Very excited that we got that verdict. The jury's verdict went a long ways to making what happened, a wrong that happened 35 years ago to my mom, right.
Do you think it cleared your dad's name?
I think it sent a message. And we'll see what the powers that may be do with that message.
Now, since my colleague Ashley reported on the case, Pooneh continued to pour time and money into clearing her father's name. She's now spent more than $3 million in this 3-decade-long battle. And she says she's not done. Because a lot of people would think, this is an unbelievable story. Holy cow. Finally, it's been pinned on the guy who the jury says did this thing. You would be celebrating and done and getting back to your life. But you're not, are you?
No. No, there's still quite a bit of work to do in this case.
And what are you trying to do still?
Well, I mean, we still need to look into what happened to my dad, right? Because he was wrongfully incarcerated. And so what I'm hoping is going to happen next is we will be able to meet with the DA's office and talk that out. And see what they want to do about it. And I think that, I mean, for me, it's not only important for them to look at what went wrong in my dad's case, but it's also important that they look at it from the standpoint of what can we do to prevent this from happening in the future? Because so many things went wrong.
Well, about that, the prosecutor in Clark County is named Tony Golick. I emailed his office last week asking for an interview. They responded today with this statement. The Clark County Prosecuting Attorney's Office will examine all of the evidence presented at the civil trial against Viktor Pell, that the civil jury returned a non-unanimous verdict, that the burden of proof at a civil trial is by a preponderance of the evidence, which is a lower burden than the beyond a reasonable doubt standard in criminal trials, and that Viktor Pell was unrepresented at his trial, are among the relevant factors this office will consider when weighing the evidence and deciding how to move forward. Pooneh Gray feels that she has kept her promise that she made all those years ago to her mom to find her killer and to hold them responsible. She still continues the fight to clear her father's name.
You know, ideally, I would love for them to arrest Mr. Pell and charge him criminally. He is 87 years old, so I don't know what the logistics would be of that. I would like Mr. Golick to begin looking into what went wrong on my dad's case. I mean, I think the jury sent a pretty loud message, but I do think an exoneration of my dad is warranted, even though he has since passed. And, you know, a lot of counties have prosecutorial misconduct review boards, so cases like this can be brought forward, and I'm hoping that he will take the role in setting up something like that, so other families who've been harmed have a venue of coming forward.
If you would like to take a deep dive on this fascinating story, check out the KGW podcast that Ashley Korsland and the team put together a few years ago. It's called The Yellow Car, and it's available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Now to an update on another local case in Beaverton. A nurse allegedly killed by her neighbor. On September 4th, Melissa Jubain did not show up for work at Providence St. Vincent. Police searched her apartment but did not find her there. Her bag, keys, and phone were reportedly missing, but her car was still parked in the complex garage. A day later, police announced they'd found Jubain's body. Her neighbor, 27-year-old Bryce Schubert, was arrested. He's charged with murder, kidnapping, and abuse of a corpse. Little is known about what happened because a judge sealed a court document in the case. Which brings us to today. Investigative reporter Kyle Aboshi tried to get the judge to unseal those. Why did we think that was so important?
Well, a couple key documents we're looking for, the probable cause affidavit and also search warrants in this case. And we asked informally the DA's office, hey, can we get a copy of these? Are you willing to unseal? They said no. So in October, I wrote a letter to the judge essentially saying, we feel like the public has a right to know what's in these documents. And the Oregon Constitution says no court shall be secret, asking the judge to please unseal.
And so far, all of the documents are sealed, correct?
Those documents that we were seeking, yes.
Okay, and so you went to court today. What happened?
Right, so the judge offered up a hearing and heard from all parties involved, including a lawyer representing KGW, other media partners, KPTV and the Oregonian helped pitch in to help pay for this attorney, but also defense and prosecution. The prosecution felt very strongly this is a very active investigation. In fact, they noted that Beaverton Police Department executed search warrants in this case within the past week. They're conducting interviews and follow-ups each and every day. Also noted it's very possible there'll be new facts and information could lead to superseding indictment or other defendants being charged in this particular case. The defense also agreed it's an active investigation.
So it sounded like there are things in there that they don't want the public to know about because it might affect the investigation.
That's exactly right. And a judge agreed.
Okay, I was going to ask, what did the judge say today?
Yes, the judge agreed and ultimately denied our request to unseal these documents. Wants to keep them secret. Primarily, it's an active investigation, but also does not want to deprive the defendant of a fair trial.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I wish we could have gotten them, but the judge has ruled, and that's that. Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate you bringing that up. Now to Oregon's state legislature, where a lone race down in Marion County could have a major impact on the upcoming legislative session and potentially the new taxes that you could be paying. That's because the name of the game now is supermajority. If Democrats have it in Salem, they can pretty much do whatever they want, pass whatever taxes they want, and they are dang close to making that happen. Let's explain. Here's a look at control of both chambers based on the Oregonians' race calls. We'll start at the bottom with the Senate, where Democrats hold an 18-12 advantage. That is a supermajority, with 3/5 of the seats controlled by Democrats. In the House, it appeared they were close, but not quite there. It looked like the 35-25 Democratic majority from last session would hold for this session, leaving Democrats 1 seat short of a supermajority in the House. That is how the Oregonians saw it as well. But then, headlines like this started popping up late last week. OPB was the first to take notice. Willamette Week followed later. It's starting to look like Democrats may get that 1 seat they need after all. A slow trickle of votes continued to come in, and the Democrat, Leslie Munoz, took the lead by a single vote over incumbent Republican Tracy Kramer. The latest results on the Secretary of State's page show Munoz extending her lead now to just over 100 votes, but this is far from over. As of Friday, there were still hundreds of votes left to be counted in the race, so we'll likely be waiting a while longer before we know the outcome. It could take actually until the vote is certified, which is early December. But according to state law, an automatic recount is triggered if the candidates are within 1/5 of 1% of the total votes cast in the race. So far, there have been 20,000 votes in the race, so that automatic recount threshold sits at just 41 votes. That will rise slightly as the total number of votes grows, but it's coming down to the wire. If the Democrat ends up winning, why does the supermajority matter this time around? It matters big time, my friends. Oregon law requires that supermajority vote to pass new taxes or increase existing ones. So, if Democrats have those votes in both chambers, well, then they can pass any tax they want without a single Republican voting yes. As long as, the Democrats don't fight amongst themselves, which is always possible. So, will that happen? Will they be able to pass any tax they want without a Republican voting yes? Who knows? But they could. And there's a Democrat in the governor's mansion who could sign those bills into law. Speaking of taxes, there are some big-time possibilities coming up this session, namely the massive transportation funding package that's been in the work for months. In theory, it could be fast-tracked on the Democrats' supermajority highway. So again, the difference between a supermajority and no supermajority in the Oregon legislature right now is made up of 100 votes in the Woodburn area. So, if anyone there ever tells you that they don't vote because they don't think their vote matters, show them this segment, tell them, hey, shut up and go vote. It's a great example of how every vote matters and can have implications well beyond your own neighborhood. Coming up next on The Story, we've had a bit of wild weather today with some of you sending us pictures and videos of hail in parts of the region this afternoon. Chief Meteorologist Matt Zaffino joins us with what you need to know this week, including the scary sounding bomb cyclone headlines that have been making the rounds. And then later, we talk a lot about small town newspapers shutting down, but how about local journalism spawning a new printed paper? The kind you hold in your hands? We'll have the details on that when The Story returns. And the man, Matt Zafino's with us now. Matt, today I was walking around to get a little bit of yogurt outside. Cold and windy. It definitely feels like winter. And now you're talking about a bomb cyclone?
Yeah, cold even before you had the yogurt too, I bet, Pat, right?
It was, yes.
It was cold. I mean, the snow level came down to the lowest of the fall so far, down to about 2,000 feet. Occasionally it got lower in the showers. So yes, it was a cold day for sure. We never made it out of the 40s. But let's talk about the bomb cyclone because it sounds so scary. And every time one of these ramps up and spins up off our coast or off the East Coast, as they happen there too, it gets a lot of attention because of the name, right? And granted, they are strong storms. But let me explain what this is. And this has been in the meteorological vocabulary for decades. So this isn't something new. It just, I don't know, 5 years ago got a lot of attention somewhere, and now it's all over the place. A bomb cyclone is when you have an area of low pressure, a storm, develop explosively. That's where the phrase bomb comes from that explosive development, right? So what is that defined by? Well, it's defined by how much the inner core of the pressure drops in a certain amount of time. So we use 24 hours, and it has to drop 24 millibars in 24 hours. I know what you're thinking. What's a millibar?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
I knew it. So it's a unit of measure of pressure. You know, when you fill up, you put air in your tires, you go to roughly 30, maybe 35, maybe 38 PSI,
right.
pounds per square inch. Millibar is exactly that. It's just a different unit of measure. 30 pounds per square inch is only about 2 millibars. If you think about that, we're talking about pressure, the average pressure across the entire planet, not too low, not too high, you know, Goldilocks pressure, 1,013 millibars. Air has weight. It's measured all the way up through the column of the sky. You just don't feel it because, you know, it's air, obviously. But we measure it with barometers, and when it drops that much, that fast, that's a bomb cyclone. Now, this one is going to go from about 1,014 millibars this morning to down to about 950 millibars tomorrow. That's a drop of like 63 millibars in 24 hours, way exceeding the threshold for a bomb cyclone. So that's what we're talking about. But will it bring us just disastrous, weather? It won't, and here's the reason why. Do you see this line right here, that line of longitude? That's 130 degrees west. What we watch for, we meteorologists here in the Northwest, is we watch for storms to get inside or east of 130 degrees longitude. This one's not going to. It gets relatively close, but it's not going to get close enough to the coast to give us super strong winds like, December 1995, or even some storms after that. Of course, the big one, the Columbus Day storm back in 1960. This will actually get deeper than the Columbus Day storm, but it won't get as close to the coast, and the path is different too. Notice how these isobar lines are all oriented over us north-south. That's more of an easterly wind direction. To get really strong winds in the Willamette Valley, you want to see low pressure go inland to our north, and you want to see these isobars oriented more east-west. That's a strong south wind. So the setup isn't perfect for a strong wind event in the valley, but because this thing is so strong and close enough, we're still going to get some good winds, Pat.
Wow. There's so much that I've just learned there. I also want to know if how long is this going to be around? If people are starting to travel, say this coming weekend for the Thanksgiving holiday, is this going to be in play?
No. This will move on.
This is come and gone?
Yeah, let me show you. In fact, I'll run the graphic out here. So this is tomorrow night at 9:30. That's when we're going to get our strongest winds. As we go into Wednesday morning, it begins to weaken, and then notice how it moves back to the west. So that's typical for really strong storms off the west coast here. They'll spin up, they'll get close, and then they kind of roll on back to the west like that. And so look at now, we don't have hardly any of those pressure lines over us at all by Thursday. So this will be a 12-hour event for us tomorrow late afternoon into early on Wednesday morning. It'll get breezy here in the valleys, but a gust of about 45, not gusts of 95, which is, what you can get with a strong bomb cyclone if the pattern was a little bit different.
All right. Thanks for explaining that and calming my nerves. That makes me feel much better.
Glad you feel better.
We'll be back right after this. Tonight in Southern Oregon, people are getting their hands on a brand new newspaper. Now that's a sentence we don't often hear these days. Ashland.News has been publishing online since 2022. They run a website and send out an email newsletter 3 times a week. But for the first time ever, they're printing the news on paper one day the old-fashioned way and sending it out to 17,000 mailboxes in the area. It's part of an effort to get the word out. They're a relatively new community news organization covering local stories throughout Southern Oregon, and the executive editor, Bert Ettling, says people are happy to see it.
We've had a great response. People are delighted to see the community news. They love having the calendar there to look at. I've gotten a lot of messages. I was on the phone a couple of times this morning from people calling and thanking me, which is very gratifying for putting that product out. But one of them was like, "Don't waste paper, and we don't need to be cutting down trees and printing newspapers. But I do like maybe once a year for the holiday events thing. That's a good thing, and then you can circle stuff or whatever." So even the Save a Tree person was accepting of this.
Ashland.News is a small news organization, 2 full-time reporters in addition to Ettling, some part-timers as well, and some freelancers. But he says it's enough to make a difference when it comes to covering local issues that no one else could cover as well as the journalists who live there. Ashland.News is funded by a nonprofit model similar to public radio. They aren't owned by a corporation. Money comes from grants and donors in the community who want good local journalism.
But with a nonprofit model, our bosses are the public. Our donors, through a board of directors, are driving your decisions, and your bottom line is the mission statement. It's not a financial thing. It's are you achieving your mission, which is to inform the public and facilitate community conversation.
There you go. Part of the reason for a print edition is also for fundraising. If you want to check out their work or make a donation, go to the name of the publication, Ashland.News. Hey, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember the story, our collective story, that never ends. If you're watching us live on TV tonight, Straight Talk with Laurel Porter's coming your way next. And for the rest of you watching online, remember you can stream the story on your own schedule. Download the free KGW Plus app, available now on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. And in the meantime, enjoy this chilly Monday night. And I'll see you right back here tomorrow night at 6:30.